He's going to 6-bet to 23,000. What does Doug do here?
You're probably wondering how we got here. Well, on last week's episode of Doug Polk Poker, we had a video on this very topic. Warning, viewer discretion is advised. It was a warm April morning, a breeze in the air, spring in full swing, summer on the horizon. After a refreshing morning beverage, I stood out in the patio, watched the sun rise, and thought, damn, what a fine day to make some content on the internet. A thought occurred to me. Folding kings. Something you should never do, right? I wondered. That day I took to YouTube and we searched. We searched long, we searched hard. Minutes spent. And we put together 5 folds of kings, over which we saw 3 that were incorrect and 2 that were correct. It seems like the math is on the side of when you have the kings, you just have to put them in. But I did make some comments about how you may or may not have to let them go if the situation arose. But really, could you imagine letting those cowboys go? It was hard for me to think of. I mean, I had done it in my past, but that was in a different time. In fact, when I was playing yesterday, we had a discussion at the table not that long before the hand in question.
Some of those folds, though, the one where the guy had like 4s or something, the guy folded kings.
I didn't see that one.
You see that one in the video? Bear Jew folded kings.
The kings,
Francisco had 4s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was wild.
I did not get a lot of those correct.
Yeah, they had.
First
They
Did
had
you do like a compilation of like kings?
Yeah.
I did a
folding?
video, so I went through all the videos I could
It's great
find
fold.
in like cash games. I mean, really only cash games where people folded kings pre-flop,
Yeah.
and I could only find 5. And so I went through and I was like, all right, let's see if people were right.
There
or
was
not.
actually another one on Live at the Bike. That was,
Oh, there was. So I have folded kings pre before. If I download all my hands, I'm sure I could find some. But it was like specifically like because everyone was 24 tabling, and it was like early under the gun or something. It was 2. Like you go to war, it's just aces or kings.
Yeah.
I folded kings twice pre-flop. Once was right, once was wrong.
5?
Yeah. 5-bet me from under the gun.
Yeah, one of mine was something like that.
Yes.
It was the limp cold 4.
Yeah.
Is it actually? Hold on. Not to push back.
It's not cold.
But is it
cold
cold
still?
if they limped?
I don't know.
It's like a lukewarm.
The table was set, and it was time for the entree. And that is where our hand begins. With the action opening up, with Andrew Neeme looking down at the pocket aces. And we're going to play some deep stack poker here, everybody. Andrew has over 300 big blinds on his roughly $63,000 stack. He decides to open it up to $500. Action now on Johnny Vibes here, looking down at the 10-7 of hearts. This is a hand you're going to typically want to let go pre-flop, but as you get deeper, you might want to make a move every now and then. But typically speaking, you're just going to let it go. Johnny decides it is time to make a move, bumps it up, probably because Brad Owen's at the table, and we all know how Brad Owen runs against the 10-7 of hearts.
Makes the call.
Oh my goodness.
And we're doing it one time, he says. Terrace is a savage. One time for Max Payne.
Anyway, Johnny Vibes 3-bets the terrace, and the action folds over to me with the pocket kings, the second best hand in No Limit Texas Hold'em. Here out of position, it's pretty simple. We're going to want to either 4-bet or fold. We're going to play pretty tight. We're going to 4-bet with all of our high pairs, ace-king, little suited Broadway action, maybe ace-queen every now and again, a little ace-5, ace-4 suited, a little 7-6 suited, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But overall, a very strong range indeed. I make it 4,800 to go, roughly 3x here over Johnny's 3-bet. And this is where the hand really goes off the rails. Now, Alex looks down at the pocket queens. In the straddle here, we are about 800 big blinds effective. Very, 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 very deep poker. He comes in over the top to 11,000. This is an interesting spot for Alex, and I think that there are a couple of different ways that you can look at it. For starters, Johnny's on a much shorter stack here, something like $20,000, $25,000. So he's on a much shorter stack in this situation. So there is an incentive for Alex to go small to give himself some room against the other stacks. That said, when he makes it this size, he is going to have to call Johnny no matter what. So in my personal opinion, I would size more around thresholds for both Andrew and for me, because you're going to have to call this jam from Johnny either way. I think I would prefer here to maybe make this a little bit bigger, 12, 13, 14,000 to go. If I do have a really strong hand here in Alex's shoes, I'm going to want to cut down on the implied odds for me to be able to call out of position. When he makes it 11K, I'm probably going to call with almost everything that I 4-bet. I'm just getting really great odds. And even though I am out of position, if it folds back to me, I'm getting, I only need 28% equity or so to make this call pre-flop. So pretty much all of my hands are going to want to continue. Because of that, I'd like to pick a size that targets more of those hands. I think maybe something more along the lines of 13-ish K probably makes a bit more sense. Generally speaking, when you 4 or 5 out of position, you want to go closer to 3x. And when you're in position, you do want to go a bit smaller. So this does still make some sense from Alex. As far as what hands I would use in Alex's shoes, I would use my highest pairs, something like queens plus. Maybe I'd mix in jacks every now and then, jacks for 10s every now and then. I would have ace king some of the time. I think ace king off is actually just going to fold here pre-flop some, which is nuts, but probably true. Certainly we're going to get in there with the ace king suited, a little ace queen suited. And then once in a blue moon, maybe you want to make a move with like ace 5 suited or 7-6 suited. Now back to Andrew. This is where it gets really, really, really crazy. So obviously this is a dream situation for Andrew in that he has aces and people are raising away. We have a very likely cooler situation on board. The question now for Andrew is how can he get paid? And the problem for him is that all of his decisions are going to look incredibly strong. There's just no way around it. The action is raise, 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 back to you, and you're 300 blinds deep. So there's no way that he can make himself look weak. It's just not really possible. So the question kind of becomes, what's the way that Andrew should play it? And at least the way that I look at this, and I'm sure there are some ring pros that will disagree with me. My game is not full ring live cash, certainly not. My game is heads up no limit, as we all know by now. But I typically try and play a strategy where I can have bluffs and value bets. So because of that, I think that I would probably just jam pre-flop here. And I would jam with like aces. I would jam with like maybe kings or ace king suited a little bit of the time, but mainly not. And then I would jam with a little bit of like an ace 5 suited kind of hand or an ace 4 suited kind of hand where I unblock ace 5. I know it seems kind of insane to want to use those last couple of hands that I mentioned. However, if I get to a spot and I'm only re-raising with just aces, my opponents are going to play 100% correctly against me. I need to take advantage of that. So if Andrew re-raises small here, he's kind of committed no matter what. Good rule of thumb for you guys at home. If you put in about a fourth of your stack or 25, 30% of your stack, you have to call a jam no matter what. So if Andrew goes for a small 6-bet here, he's going to call a jam regardless. At any point where you're committing yourself to the pot, you should just jam. It's just a good rule of thumb. Otherwise, you can call or you can jam. So I think in Andrew's shoes here, I would be a little worried to just call with anything because then it lets the 4-better in behind to call as well. You're way more likely to lose this pot. I think I would just jam with aces, and I think my jam range would be what I said there. Aces, little ace king suited, little kings, although kings probably mixes fold some, and then once in a blue moon we get spicy with the old ace 5 or ace 4 suited, and we call it a day. Now you might be thinking, Doug, you're ripping in 300 blinds with ace 5 suited or ace 4 suited. Doesn't that seem kind of crazy? And the answer is yes, it does seem kind of crazy, but you will have a lot of fold equity, as we're going to see here in a second. Now, Johnny Vibes gets out of the way here with a 10-7 suited. By the way, hilarious that I talked about folding kings pre in that video. Johnny Vibes was in that video. He was one of the folds that was correct with kings pre. And we talked about that a little bit earlier, which is just nuts. Anyway, back to me with the kings. I don't know what happened along the way where I became the guy that makes big folds. I think a lot of people remember my fold versus Phil Hellmuth where I had the straight versus his straight. I think that it made a lot of sense there. But I think we're staring down the barrel of a fold with kings because there are two really big issues here. The first big issue is Andrew's range to be able to make it 23K here. He really can't do this with queens. This would be very speedy with queens. He would just be committing himself versus aces and kings. And then he also is very unlikely to be bluffing because if you're bluffing, you wouldn't want to let potentially Alex just call here with a hand to try and, hit a flop versus your ace 5 suited. So his range really on this size kind of has to just be the super strong hands. it's kind of difficult to imagine Andrew having more than aces or kings here for value. And it's also kind of tough to imagine him bluffing. I mean, maybe ace king suited, maybe, but that feels real light in this situation. So that would just be Andrew alone. I am also 800 big blinds deep with the guy to my left. So in the case I beat Andrew, the guy to my left cold 5-bet. He can have aces. And if he's got aces and I put Andrew in, I have to call this jam, or I have to put in like 40K and then fold to his jam. I just think this is a fold. And I took a little sip of my whiskey and I said, you know what, Doug? Don't look for ways to continue here. You know what you have to do. And I'm not proud of that. Alex also made a pretty good fold here too. Not easy to let go of the queens, but with this action, I guess it's time to fold. And he did not waste any time on this one. Thanks for joining today, guys. We have a stream right now at the Lodge. I'm commentating. Hear more about how I play poker. I'll see you there. Peace.